Thank you all for coming to this awesome meetup today. It's really awesome to see everyone here. Come on, let's bring it in for a second. I just want to actually get a quick show of hands. I want to know what the demographic is here, because I feel like we got all sorts of people. Like, we got some really technical audio people here and some non-technical people here. So, like, raise your hand if you design for VR. If you do anything for VR, designing VR games. Keep your hand up if you are an audio designer for VR. So that's like nobody. Cool, there's some of you. Now raise your hand if you're like a technical audio person. If you like really know audio at a technical level. Okay, cool. Now, if you're just a VR enthusiast and aren't technical or developer or anything like that, you're just cool, happy to be here, raise your hand. Alright, sweet. That's our audience. I'm glad to finally know that. I was like, oh, we got a mix of people here. Alright, so my talk's about spatial audio capture for 360 in particular. So, you know, you've been seeing all the 360 videos on YouTube, on the gear, whatever. A lot of them don't even have spatial audio. A lot of them, you'll notice, are totally stereo, head-locked, linear experiences. You're doing this, and the audio is still, boom, right inside of your head in the middle of it. And, you know, really, from a production standpoint, you have to be considering spatial audio from the get-go to actually be able to pull your production to the next level in terms of audio. So Sally did a really great job, a little great primer into 3D audio and why that's important and why you should be considering that. We'll skip that, but who am I? So I'm the Associate Creative Director here. I built some experiences, whatever. I had an indie game studio before this called Blackout VR. We developed audio-only horror games, and I've just been really obsessed with 3D audio pretty much my whole life. I've been pretty much like, all right, how can we actually pull this to the next level? So I've done work in a lot of technical capacities, building tools, all the way to designing stuff. But yeah, that's me. That's me freaking out about VR. Woo, VR. Cool. So, I'm going to go over a lot of stuff really quickly in the spatial audio capture realm. I'm going to talk about some formats, some approaches, and what you might want to consider when approaching spatial audio. Being like, all right, particularly for a linear medium, what works and what doesn't. There's a lot of formats out there right now. Let's clear the way for that. And then also some principles that I've learned from doing a lot of capture in ambisonics. So we're going to talk about that too. It's like, what's ambisonics, right? And then general takeaways about audio for linear VR as well. So, formats and paradigms. There's a bunch. These are some terms you've probably heard being thrown around the audio sphere here and there, and you're probably like, oh, what are some of these? Maybe you know what they are, maybe you don't, but let's kind of just go over them. So we'll start with channel-based. Channel-based is what you know. It's like 5.1 surround sound, it's stereo, it's 9.1, it's all of these things. Basically, the paradigm is one speaker per channel per location. What does that actually mean? There's one speaker over here, one speaker over here, at negative 30 degrees and 30 degrees, and boom, that's stereo. And then what have we done? That was like 50 years ago. We've just added more speakers. 5.1, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then 9.1. So this is not a sustainable thing, because how many people do you know that actually own a 5.1 setup? Probably not many. And all games are done in 5.1 surround. And then now with VR, that doesn't translate at all, because you now need to be able to get full 360 degrees of freedom. Okay, so binaural. You've heard of binaural. We do binaural here. What is binaural? Binaural is basically the way your head understands where sound is coming from. Your personal ability to localize sound as a human based on your anatomy and physiology. That's binaural audio. So you can tell sounds in 360 degrees, and that comes from your physical mechanism. So then what's object-based and ambisonics? We'll start with object-based. Games have been doing this for years. Atmos just figured this out recently, and that's Dolby, and that's really kind of alright. Each object, we're going to track each physical sound object with their 3D location in space, and based on that, kind of figure out and output that. So whether that's outputting that binaurally or outputting that on a 5.1 setup, you're still tracking each individual sound object in your game, in your scene, in your movie, or whatever. So then what's ambisonics? Ambisonics is really an interesting thing, because with ambisonics, you're actually representing your entire sound field, front, left, back, elevation included, but the channels in your audio aren't actually corresponding to speakers or speaker locations. So what's the advantage of all this is that you can actually focus on sounds in terms of their locations, and you can design for that, you can capture in that format, but it will actually translate to different output formats. So there's a lot of advantages. So the full sphere, like I just mentioned, you get all directions, and then you can output it into multiple formats. You can take an ambisonics thing and decode it to binaural. You can decode it to 5.1. You can decode it to 7.1, and it'll translate across all these mediums. Now, the extent to which, the quality of which will vary, obviously. It's not like you're going to have the same experience across everything, but you do have that opportunity. Once you, it's kind of, consider it an intermediate output format. So it's a very powerful thing, and it allows you to kind of rotate your head in 360. It allows you to really actually have flexibility when you're actually in VR, because you want a sound that's over here. You want to be able to turn your head in VR, have it stay there. You want to hear a bird flying over your head, you want to be able to follow that. And all of that is not possible with a lot of the other output formats. And to have it in ambisonics, your mix in that form allows you to do that. So, and the real big reason, in my opinion, is that YouTube and Facebook just got behind it. They've been doing that. And if you want spatial audio in your film, in your experience, and you want to get it on YouTube and Facebook, it's there. The support is there. So let's talk about that for a second. So YouTube supports first order ambisonics and second order ambisonics. I'll get to what those mean in a second. But this is actually Facebook's handy little audio encoder. So what you actually can do now is you can actually go ahead and capture sound using specific microphones, which I'll get to in a second. And you can actually take specific sounds, put them in your workstation, and pan them to these locations using ambisonic panners. And then boom, you get this ambisonic mix. And then if you put that on YouTube, then all of a sudden, then if you are dragging your mouse around, or if you're in a VR headset and you're doing this, the sounds move. They actually translate. They're actually binaurally panned. And what YouTube and Facebook do on the back end is they take that ambisonic output and they spatialize that into binaural, which is why you're like, hey, I got two headphones, isn't what I'm hearing binaural? Yes, you are hearing binaural, but the input that you give to Facebook is ambisonics, and then the output is then binauralized on the back end, and that's the power of it, because it's all happening in real time. So you're watching the video, you pan, Facebook's like, all right, using this, we know that this sound object was coming from this location, so we know how to decode that down to binaural, and that's very, very powerful. And a lot of people don't take advantage of that, so hopefully you walk away from this kind of knowing, all right, maybe I should be considering this output format a little more to bring my productions to the next level. So I mentioned orders. So we're going to get into this. This is going to get a little bit technical. I know I'm already pretty technical, but I'm going to keep it quick on this one. So why are there orders of ambisonics, and why should you care? Really, the reason is quality. You get more spatial fidelity, and when I say spatial fidelity, you get clarity. You can tell, okay, there's a sound over here, but instead of being like, all right, it's definitely over here, or it's kind of over here, or it's kind of here, as you move up in orders, you actually get clarity. You're like, yeah, it's definitely there. You can start pinpointing things a little bit more. And the way ambisonics is represented is in terms of these spherical harmonics. So these are actually the first 4 channels of ambisonics. 1, 2, 3, 4. Then as you move up in orders, this 4-channel file is what YouTube and Facebook accept. You give it this 4-channel file, and these are actually, each channel represents a certain part of the sphere. So instead of, and before, like channel-based, it was, oh, boom, 1 channel per speaker per location. It's, oh, here's the energy in this part of the sphere. Not necessarily, here's what's coming out of this channel and location. So it's kind of, that's where the intermediate file format comes in. But as you move up, you basically build this sphere up to infinity by pointing in. You're like, all right, I can really hone in on how much energy is in each pinpointed location of the sphere, and you really can recreate that up to its full fidelity. And that's a powerful thing. So right now, YouTube supports first order, Facebook supports second order, and we're only going to see this build outwards. This higher level of support, this higher level of experience, bringing this medium, pushing it further and further. So it's a very scalable thing. But anyway, that's ambisonics. Now, capturing spatial audio. There's a lot of microphones out there right now. There's like the Sennheiser Ambio, there's the Core Sound Tetra mic, there's the Eigen mic, which does higher order ambisonics. These are both first order ambisonics. And then you got like binaural heads, you've got multiple ears, that's like the 3DO mic. You got even bigger like ambisonic microphones, that's Visisonics. And then you've even got the Zoom H2N, which has a 4 microphone thing inside of it and a way to process that into ambisonics. This is kind of your like, this is like a few $100s. It's a super accessible method, but then you jump up to like a few $1,000s, you know, and then many thousands of dollars. So like it's a wide spectrum of things. You're gonna get a wide range of quality, But these are some samples of things that you can start using to capture your audio. But the thing I want to mention is that when people think binaural audio, when people think VR, people think this. People think, oh, ears, binaural heads. That's actually not the way to go. And the reason is because that's a static image. So, well, actually the first, oops, I just went back, boom. Yeah, so that's one head. That's one direction. You capture the scene once with this little dummy head. You can't rotate anymore because you've fixated the position. In a 360 film, you can look anywhere, and that's no good. Now, this kind of solves that issue a little bit. These mics with a lot of ears, you'll see a few of these around. This works because they say, all right, we're going to take multiple ears and we're going to let you move between them. As you rotate in the scene, we're going to let you crossfade between all of the ears. And that works a little better, but still, you're kind of isolated to these 8 locations. There's no height, and it doesn't scale well through these mediums, through the technology. It doesn't scale well through the medium. So this isn't really a desired microphone to use either. So me personally, I really like that one. That's the Eigen mic. We were fortunate enough to have an Eigen mic here at this office, which captures up to 4th order ambisonics. So what does that mean? That just means really, really high spatial fidelity. There's like 32 microphones in this little ball, and you see me, I'm like geeking out. You can tell. And I'm still geeking out right now. So we took this thing, and we're like, all right, what can we do with it? What are some amazing things we can do? So we took it to Abbey Road, and we took it to East West Recording Studios and a number of other places, and we did a lot of interesting experiments, recording sessions in both music and sound. I've taken it out into the field, done a bunch of field recordings with it. Really exciting stuff. So here's one session that we did with a singer-songwriter in the Abbey Road penthouse. The lights are super important for good spatial audio. Wait, they say sarcasm doesn't translate in these kind of conversations. Maybe I shouldn't do that. Anyway, okay, so boom, there's the Eigen mic. We set up, and then we also had the engineers do what they normally do. Like, hey, set up your mics, do it as you would. You're professionals, kind of like, let's do this at a high production quality. So that was one session. We did a singer-songwriter. We did some solo piano stuff. And with each one of these Abbey Road sessions, we actually experimented a lot. We would do the same song over and over again. We'd take the Eigen mic each time, and we'd move it to different locations. Because one of the really powerful things about this mic is that you actually capture the whole physical space. And then here's another one we did. We did an orchestral session. And there's like a decatry for anybody who's familiar with recording techniques and things like that. And we actually kind of put the microphone in the center of the decatry, and we did orchestral sessions. Here's set up for the orchestral session in Abbey Road in the penthouse yet again. There's Joy. You can see the back of her head. You can also see the back of her head if you turn around and look into that office. And we also did some choral sessions with the Westminster Chorus up at East West. This one's actually, I think, from yesterday, or Saturday. I was up there doing one of their final recording sessions. We were recording their whole album. Here's a little bit more on their mic setup. So, we'd take these sessions, we'd go in, and then, approach it from both the very traditional perspective with, all the audio engineers that work at these studios approaching these sessions as they normally would. And then we would as well kind of go in there and be like, all right, what's going to make sense for, VR? What's going to make sense for spatial audio? How can we capture this environment? And then we go in and we do these sessions. And we captured a lot of really good stuff. We captured a lot of really bad stuff. And really we found that this microphone really changed according to the physical environment you put it in, obviously, right? It's like, oh, duh, it's going to change, obviously. But the key thing that I really understood from it was, wow, like, this microphone picks up every single thing that's happening in your environment, every direction, with no filters. Like, it's all there. It's all coming in. And you really have to take the time to understand exactly what's happening in your physical acoustic environment, more so than you normally would as a sound designer and audio engineer. To the point where I'm now really kind of being like, all right, maybe this doesn't make sense if there's a drummer and a bassist in the same room. I can't really handle that. One source is going to totally overpower another. We took a jazz ensemble, we put them in a mildly live room, and the recordings were all garbage because there was one really powerful sound source. Isolation is super important. Making sure you have a well-balanced mix is super important. So then we take them, we'd record all these things, we'd demo them on the OSSICs. This is John Eads at Abbey Road. He's kind of listening. You can see he's kind of grooving out. He's having a good time. So that's one of the things we do. We can take that ambisonic mix at a higher order and decode it down to the headphones themselves. And you can actually hear that spatial mix. And there's built-in head tracking on the headphones, so you can actually get that same experience. One thing that was important for us is that, okay, boom, there's the audio happening in the real world. We've now captured it spatially with this eigenmic. We've also caught unique sources by having close mics up and around the place. And then now we've decoded that to the headphones. Now that decode step is important. So YouTube decodes it to stereo headphones normally, and you get that binaural experience, and cool. Now the OSSICs offer that individualized binaural experience that steps it up a little bit. But now, does that actually translate to the real world environment? So what we did is we set up a dodecahedron of speakers in our old office. This is our old office in La Jolla. This is a dodecahedron right here. And this is my little workstation with the Reaper. I'm sitting there, I'm jamming out. And we would do that. We'd kind of be like, all right, let's decode it down to a dodecahedron, 20-channel speaker array, and translate that experience. So you're like, all right. And the most amazing thing that I remembered as soon as I sat down in this environment was hit the play button, hearing the room tone of the Abbey Road penthouse. I sat down and I was like, I am no longer in this La Jolla office, I am in Abbey Road. Like, just the physical sensation of that was so strong to see that translate. But yeah, so there's some kind of sessions and some stuff that we actually did with this eigenmic and kind of capturing that spatial audio in a method that can actually translate. You can actually take this and you can upload that to YouTube. So some tools, just to cover really quick. This is not even comprehensive in the slightest. It's just what I use. I love Reaper as a DAW. It's probably one of the best DAWs for VR audio right now because it can handle up to 64 channels per track. It can do all sorts of crazy, ridiculous things. You will need a digital audio workstation because these mics, while they might be amazingly powerful, are not enough. You will need to go in there, you will need to have other audio to supplement that. This is your bed to work off of. This is kind of your baseline to be like, all right, we've already got a solid foundation to work off of. Now let's get a sound designer in here, let's get a composer in here, let's get a mixing engineer in here to actually bring this audio to the next level. Ambmix is my ambisonic panner. This allows me to actually put sounds that aren't spatial, mono stereo sounds, into the stereo field. So I actually put together this little Reaper template that lets me actually process my audio. And I use this for like everything, composing, eigenmic stuff, whatever. So I can take my eigenmic thing and put it here, and it encodes it into third-order ambisonics, and it passes it through and it binaurally decodes it for normal headphones. Or I can binaurally decode that for the OSSICs, which is a slightly different process. And then I've got my favorite power synths here, like Omnisphere and East-West. I can put 5.1 surround beds on there, and on top of all of those, I've got these, on each of these tracks, I've got ambisonic panners on them. And I actually can take this, and these are the left and right channels of my stereo, and I can put them anywhere, and then I can start doing things like, okay, cool, I've got my ambisonic sound bed, let me take my close mic of one of the violin section, and put it in approximately the same zone, and then now I can mix the two, and now I can actually make the sound that I want. And the amazing thing is I can put that on YouTube, I can rotate, and boom, the violin's going to be there with a mixed sound at a higher level like I want it to be. I can start actually sculpting the sound that I want. You start enabling sound designers and composers to work in a similar way that they had before, but within a new paradigm with the end result of a higher level experience. And of course, my decoder, which can decode to either stereo, surround, whatever that I want to. So, some takeaways. Make sure you're doing ambisonics for 360 video, because if you're not, you've already put your experience down here. You have this opportunity to now like elevate your experience to a higher level. So understand this paradigm, learn it a little bit, and learn what kind of tools are out there. I know I only talked about the capture end. There's a rabbit hole on the editing and mixing side of things. So definitely ask me about that if you're interested. I'm happy to talk on here. My name is Kedar, blah, blah, blah. You can talk to me. Spatial fidelity is great from these microphones, but that's really not enough. You have this bed, and it's important to have close mics. So if you are doing a live set, if you're doing a live capture, if you're doing any kind of acting sessions, make sure your actors, your instruments are all close mic'd, have lavs, have spot mics on them, because you want to take that live scene and be able to mix it and control it to get the actual sound that you want, to be able to deliver your narrative. You know, be able to pull people out, pull people back in, best depending on where you are in your experience. You want to have that control. Designing your sets with your audio in mind, whether it's your recording studio session, you know, you might set things up in a way that's conducive to the musicians or the room, but also really consider the way the physical acoustics are happening. Are you outdoors? Every single sound is going to be picked up. Are you going to be having, is there one guy that's super, super loud in the way he talks? Is there one guy that's super quiet? That matters, because now your entire base bed is going to be screwed up if there's one really loud audio source. So that acoustic balance is important. You're going to need to start spending time taking a little bit more consideration into the acoustic design of your environments before you capture things with a mic that actually picks up every single thing from every single direction. That's incredibly sensitive. So, and then once you have that, make sure you're working with someone who knows audio. If you're not like a designer, if you're not an audio person, get someone in there who can take this audio and process it and actually massage it and get to the level to bring your experience to a whole nother, state. So this is how I would approach this beginning of live concerts, VR 360 videos, narratives, studio sessions, and this is kind of what some of the basic things that I've learned at a capture level for doing ambisonics for VR stuff. But yeah, there's my quick presentation. Hope you enjoyed it. Email me. Cool. Yeah, any questions you can ask me. Sweet.